Was it really Andy Kotelnicki's play calling that cost them against Oregon? Because when I look back at this game, someone else's performance was a lot more egregious.
You are Locked On Nittany Lions, your daily podcast on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are locked on to Penn State football, and as always, thank you so much for making Locked On Nittany Lions your first listen and watch every single day. My name is Zach Seyko, and I am your host of the show, credentialed media member for both Penn State football and Penn State wrestling. More game takeaways from Penn State versus Oregon. We're going to talk about what we really learned about the Ducks later on in the show. Take a look at Drew Allar's support system or instance, lack thereof. But was it the play calling that led to the demise of Penn State, Andy Kotelnicki's play calling that led to the loss primarily against Oregon? Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. Friendly reminder to let me know your thoughts down in the comments section, and if you're not an everydayer, become one. Subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts. So, was it the play calling from Andy Kotelnicki that led to primarily the reason for Penn State's loss? It wasn't good. It wasn't the best game that I've seen him call. I think there were definitely a lot of questionable moments there. But you can only open up your playbook so much. You can only get so creative when the execution is not there. And it was particularly because of the performance, or again, I say lack thereof, from the guys up front. You thought I was going to go immediately to Drew Allar, and yes, I've already given my criticism about Allar and the plays that he didn't make against Oregon. Yeah, in the fourth quarter, mounted a comeback, right? But there were still just a handful of plays, if that, just a few compared to Dante Moore, who did everything that Oregon needed him to do to win that game. But I think the offensive line for Penn State might have had the most egregious performance on that night, which led to Andy Kotelnicki being restricted with what plays he could call. And then same thing with Drew Allar's performance. It had a trickle-down effect. It was bad. 18 pressures on 25 dropbacks. So that means Drew Allar only had 7 clean pockets or 7 opportunities to throw a good pass. That's just downright awful. And then in the ground game where Penn State, if they were going to win this game, and you saw that late in the fourth quarter, it was for 3.5 quarters, the offensive line, they were dominated, particularly in the interior, by Oregon's defensive tackles. But Tatum Tuioti, Mateo Uiagalelei still had solid performances. But it was really Amari Washington and Bear Alexander who had the most impact, in my opinion, in that game. But 18 pressures on 25 dropbacks for Drew Allar. So yeah, no wonder Andy Kotelnicki couldn't get creative. But it was also, Allar's missing some routine passes. Guys that are wide open, Luke Reynolds on multiple occasions, some missed timing routes. Who do you blame that on? Do you blame that on Allar, who's making a spot throw? And is Kyron Hudson not in the right place? Or is Allar just inaccurate with that throw? We're never going to truly know. Everybody's perspective is going to be different in that instance. But when we can look and say, hey, Allar should have completed this pass. Hey, the offensive line should have held up in protection there, or made a better running avenue, made a better lane for either Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. It wasn't there. The offensive line, I think, does bear a lot of criticism in this game because it was not. It was far from their best performance. Andy Kotelnicki is going to get blame. Drew Allar is going to get blame. The wide receivers as well. But I think the offensive line, because it starts and ends up front, they had the most negative impact, I think, on Penn State's offensive game plan at the end of the day. But then they did settle in, and look at that. On the plays where Penn State was the most successful, you have the Devontae Ross touchdown. You were able to push the ball down the field and just in increments continue to pick up yards running the football. When they finally settled in at 3.5 quarters, look at how much success Penn State had moving the football. So the offensive line, you can only call so many plays to get Drew into rhythm if you're Andy Kotelnicki, because I thought the play calling, while like I said, it was questionable at times. Hey, that overtime, the play in the second overtime doesn't make a lot of sense. But Drew Allar also, I don't think enough people have pointed out, he killed the play at the line of scrimmage. He made the adjustment there in that moment. So there's going to be responsibility across the board. I just find it interesting that Andy Kotelnicki has gone from somebody that was described as a magician, somebody that is one of the most respected offensive coordinators in all of college football, to he needs a pink slip, he needs to be fired, and the writing was on the wall for the longest time. No, it wasn't. No, it was not. Kotelnicki, who led a group last year that had no wide receivers, right? Trey Wallace, Amari Evans, they didn't do enough against elite competition. They still contributed in games against easier competition, but the whole shtick around Penn State is that they don't have any wide receivers. It was just the Tyler Warren show. It was Nicholas Singleton, Katron Allen. It was Tyler Warren and friends, right? Andy Kotelnicki led that group to a top 15 mark in the nation. That was a top 15 offense in the entire country, despite Penn State having its shortcomings offensively. But the signs have always been there. He's gimmicky, Big 12 offense, but that wasn't an issue last season. Does maybe Tyler Warren, I guess, has that much of an impact? Can change that many outcomes with how good the Indianapolis Colts are seeing it, I suppose. But I don't think one player completely and totally makes or breaks an entire offense, especially at tight end. I don't think Andy Kotelnicki's success is primarily just because of a Heisman contender at the tight end position. So no, I don't buy into the fact that Andy Kotelnicki is too gimmicky, or, again, are there some play calls that are questionable or not necessarily the best, or do you get outcoached in certain spots? I think Tosh Lupoi brought his A game. I'm not here to say that Andy Kotelnicki didn't call a bad game, but to say that he should be fired, or that he's not a good offensive coordinator, or that he bears a brunt of the responsibility from Penn State's shortcomings last night, or on Saturday night, excuse me, that is where I disagree. I think it's the offensive line. Should Andy Kotelnicki try to do some things to get more creative to take that pressure off? Again, you can only do so much. Can only call so many plays. At some point, the offensive line just has to say, we got to settle in. We got to move some people off of the line of scrimmage. We got to give Drew Allar a little more time. That's how I saw it. Because you can't necessarily coach your way out of offensive line struggles. You can do some things to, override the issue. You can do some things to mask it, but you can't just completely outcoach offensive line issues. That is why coaches will say it starts up front. And I think it really limited what Kotelnicki wanted to do, and how comfortable and how into rhythm Drew really got. But all across the board, Kotelnicki, the offensive line, Allar, all made mistakes in that game against Oregon, because Oregon is an elite team. And that's what elite teams do. They get you to play below your best. They get you to struggle. And it showed. But I think what people are mostly frustrated with, that's why we haven't seen, this is my final thought on Andy Kotelnicki's play calling in this game against Oregon, is that I don't believe that we've seen these signs that, okay, yeah, does Kotelnicki get too cute at points and times? Sure. But there isn't this long track record of Kotelnicki struggling to call plays. You could point to an instance against Ohio State and this game in Oregon. Because against SMU, against Boise State, against Notre Dame, he called great games. Against Oregon in the Big Ten Championship the last time around, called a great game. So when you stack up the performances, hey, Kotelnicki did a really good job aside from just a couple of games. But then when you compare and contrast Drew Allar or the wide receivers, those issues are popping up more often than not. More often than they should, maybe I should say. But that's what I mean. You can point to more than just a few in those cases. For Kotelniki, I can only point to a couple of games. And again, that was a top 15 offense from a season ago with the shortcomings that they had. So I don't think Kotelniki should be fired. I don't think Kotelniki is the main reason why Penn State lost that game. If you want me to point to one position group, I don't think the offensive line held up their end of the bargain. And then it led to issues in the play calling and Drew Allar definitely not having a good game. So with that being said, let's talk about Drew Allar, because in my initial post-game show and post-game reaction, I talked about how Allar struggled and continues to make the mistakes despite someone who's played a lot of college football and has had a lot of starts in his career. You think he would be over some of these tendencies, so it brings into question his support system. We're going to talk about that next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. And this episode is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade. 5 Hour Energy shots deliver the tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. What you'll love most is how portable they are. Big taste, tiny shot. You can take it anywhere and get that boost that you need. You'll always be able to have your favorite flavor with 17 options to choose from. If you get bored with one, you can try another. You'll always have your favorites. And honestly, why people love 5 Hour Energy is because of how fast it will kick in. It's sugar-free, so you don't have to worry about crashing later. Enough with boring, flavorless caffeine. It's time to give your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5 Hour Energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store or online at 5hourenergy.com. That's the number 5hourenergy.com, or over at Amazon today. Now let's talk about Drew Allar's support system, the supporting cast. This is the coaches around him to, again, pass catchers, wide receivers, tight ends. Talked about the offensive line at length in the first segment, but that is a part of this equation as well, because I do think Drew Allar bears a lot of responsibility here. It's different if he was a first-year starter or this was a totally brand new offense, but no. Second year of Andy Kotelnicki's system. Same coaching staff, relatively speaking, right? Danny O'Brien's been on staff for quite some time. Marcus Higgins as well. So there isn't a lot of newness. There aren't these inconsistencies where you can point and say, okay, that needs time. I have said that, hey, I think there's going to be a chemistry issue with Trevor Pena, and maybe not as much, but Kyron Hudson and Devontae Ross, because they still transferred in. They still haven't played a lot of ball together, but particularly Pena, since he did transfer in after May, that the passing game, we are not going to see the best version of it. Honestly, we haven't really seen any version of it. We've seen no version of it, which is bad, but that's what I mean, is that, okay, this is supposed to get better, but we're really seeing the growing pains of it so far to start. So what does this all mean for Allar, again, who is a 4th-year veteran, 3rd year starting, and 2nd year within Andy Kotelnicki's system? It is strange to see this regression. It immediately points to, okay, the coaches that are working with him directly. Danny O'Brien has been with Penn State's team. This is his 5th season. And Allar is now Danny O'Brien. James Franklin has, referred to him, not specifically, but alluded to the fact that he is a rising star in the college football ranks, that he's going to have a very, very good career, very solid career in college football. Who knows what the future holds for him? That's not trying to imply anything, but I'm saying that, is Danny O'Brien going to, graduate from this role of a quarterback's coach and eventually be a play caller or something like that? Maybe they promote from within if there's ever any coaching changes in the near future. I don't know about all that. I don't know, because again, we are not seeing tangible progress with Allar. Allar is making the same mistakes as a fourth-year veteran that he was in his first year starting. If you compare it, sure, there are probably some things that are maybe decision making is, and I know I say that on the heels of a game losing interception like that, but I'm talking about going through his progressions, okay, or a little bit of footwork. Maybe it's not as bad as it was, but it's still not translating into better results. So you might have these things where you can point to, okay, his progressions are better, his footwork's better, but it's not translating to tangible results where you can point to and say, okay, XYZ is better. This stat is better. This margin is better. Even though the tape might say otherwise, a scout might point out and say, well, yeah, Allar's footwork compared to his first season is better in his third season, but it's not translating to something tangible. I'm not going to be overly critical on Trace McSorley, someone who's just shown up to help out as the assistant quarterbacks coach and really just getting into coaching overall. But it's great to see him back in Happy Valley, and I would like to think as a rookie coach that he is only going to get better, right? But it does beg this question too, and this is where I want to give credit where credit's due to Mike Portman, who's covered Penn State football for a long time and had an article that I thought was really interesting where he interviewed a psychologist to talk about what is going on with Drew Allar. And I'm not going to go through the entirety of the article, but at the end, he gives a Q&A where the psychologist talks about it might be hurting Drew more than it is helping him with all these different influences. Because of the way that Portman described Allar's situation with James is working with him. James is a former college quarterback himself. Danny O'Brien's the QB's coach and a former college quarterback. Trace McSorley. Then you have Ty Howell and Andy Kotelnicki. You also have Allar's personal quarterback trainer in the offseason in Brad Mandler. Is that too much influence? Is that too many voices saying, are they all saying the same thing? Are they all saying different things and trying to make different tweaks because they have different perspectives? And is it almost overload at that point for Allar? The psychologist agrees with that. The psychologist is the one that points that out and doesn't say, well, it's very real that could be too much for Allar. So maybe he's being overcoached to an extent, right? That's a lot of perspective, but I want to point it out. I want to make it apparent because maybe what's going on here again. Why is the 5-star quarterback who, at least in his junior year, looked like he was taking a step forward, now looks like he's gone back past his junior season and regressed to looking like a first-year starter? That's the issue that we're trying to get to the bottom of. Then the pass catchers, the wide receivers, okay. And the tight ends in this instance, look, Luke Reynolds, Khalil Dinkins, and Andrew Rapplier, none of them are going to look like Tyler Warren. The version of Tyler Warren, may I point out, did take 5 years to materialize. Tyler Warren didn't become a Heisman contender overnight. Yes, Heisman contender. But Khalil Dinkins, I feel as a veteran tight end going into his 5th season and someone that James Franklin said, has a bright future in the NFL, should be contributing a little more. Luke Reynolds is a former 5-star tight end. His situation is different because, again, Tyler Warren, it took 5 years to get to that first round status. Luke Reynolds, I think, is still only going to get better, and his potential has yet to be reached. He has not peaked yet at all, but you will see it fluctuate with his performance. The wide receivers are the ones, and Andrew Rapplier is working back from injury, but still, former 4-star tight end, top 10 tight end in the country when he was a recruit. It's the wide receivers that continue to disappoint or get called into question. Devontae Ross had a nice game. He was heavily utilized, and that's why we talked about him a lot in the offseason, because you saw it in the blue and white game, just the speed, how dynamic he is. You can hand him the ball off, you can get him jet sweeps, and they're doing that with Trevor Pena too, but Devontae Ross did really seem like the guy that could open up this offense and take it to new heights, and at least against Oregon, well, he was the main contributor with 4 catches, 48 yards, and the 2 touchdowns. It's Trevor Pena, who was an all-conference receiver at Syracuse, who's limited. Kyron Hudson did not have a catch against Oregon. And he He comes over from the Pac-12, right? This is comparable competition, and he's receptionless. So Marcus Hagans comes back up. And I know what I've said in the past about Hagans. Give him time. You know, and he has gotten better, but mainly in recruiting. It's not translating to on-field results. Okay, in the non-conference against Nevada, that's great. Kyron Hudson and Trevor Pena have a great day there. But against comparable competition, against first and second year guys in the secondary, Oregon's secondary won that battle decisively against 3 veteran wide receivers. I'm not calling for any jobs here, but we need to point out what's going on. And that there is responsibility across the board. There's elements that Drew Allar is not doing his job enough. Same with the pass catchers. Same with the offensive line. And then the coaching staff. There are puzzle pieces everywhere. It's not just one person or one group, but who bears the most responsibility at the end of the day. To each their own. I think everybody's going to have a different perspective and say, you know, it's James Franklin. It's Andy Kotelnicki. It's Marcus Hagans and Danny O'Brien. It's Drew, right? This has been going on for multiple years now and isn't solved just yet. Can it be fixed? I mean, hypothetically speaking, yes. Penn State can take this Oregon game and continue to hash this out and fix these issues. But my confidence, my optimism in that, just one game after another, continues to speak to me that it's more likely that none of that happens as opposed to it actually happening. Now let's bring Oregon back into this, because Penn State may have its issues. Oregon's a really good football team. And we actually learned a lot about the Ducks from this game. How good are they? How elite are they? Could they win a national title? We're going to discuss that next here on Locked On Nittany Lions. This episode is brought to you by Quo. One of the tools that help make a huge difference for business owners is Quo, formerly Open Phone. It's the same great business phone system you've heard me talk about before, but just with a new name. And here's why it matters. Every missed call is money left on the table. When every customer conversation counts, you need a phone system that keeps you connected 24/7. Quo is the #1 business phone system that streamlines customer communications. It works right through an app on your phone or computer, so no more carrying 2 phones or relying on a landline. Their built-in AI agent is a game changer. It can answer calls after hours, capture leads, and keep business moving even when you're off the clock. Whether you're a solo operator juggling everything or part of a larger team, Quo makes it easy to stay responsive and professional. See why over 90,000 businesses trust Quo, formerly Open Phone. Get started for free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/lockedoncollege. That is quo.com/lockedoncollege. And if you've got existing numbers with another service, Quo will port them over at no extra charge. That is Quo. Quo, no missed calls, no missed customers. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is back, and FanDuel has an offer that you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use all across the app. FanDuel gives you so many ways to play, whether that's parlays, player props, or follow the live lines during games. It makes watching football even more exciting when you've got a little something riding on the action. Whether you're a casual fan or love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. You can bet on NFL games, you can bet on college football, including, yes, Penn State, and lines are available for the next game, Penn State versus UCLA. Penn State is a hefty 26.5 point favorite, minus 4,500 on the money line. If you're thinking UCLA, plus 1,600. The total sits at 50.5. If you like those lines, you can bet them over at FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. And for new customers, if you bet just $5, and if that bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets. And now we've reached the part of the show where I get to admit that I was wrong. Very wrong about Oregon defensively. There was talent, but I definitely had my skepticism going into this game, thinking, hey, Penn State's going to be able to win matchups. They're going to be able to hold their own. They did not. Not until late in the game. I mean, this was pretty much out of reach until Penn State made that comeback. But it's because Oregon's defense came to play ball across the board. The only group that I didn't really question, the linebackers, I thought Bryce Betcher, Jerry Mixon, solid group. But, okay, they have new defensive tackles. How are the defensive ends going to hold up in run defense as well, since Uiagalelei and Tuioti are primarily pass rushers? The secondary, hey, that's a loaded secondary, but it's gone through a makeover. Are there chemistry issues, right? Can the freshmen really shut down veteran wide receivers or hold them in check? Yes to all of it, especially the defensive tackles, because Amari Washington and Bear Alexander, who would have been a phenomenal pickup for Penn State out of the transfer portal, but Oregon gets him, lived in the backfield all night long. Those guys were disruptive. It's a major reason why Penn State's offensive line was not as good as it was. The pass rush there for Oregon, they got tons of pressure. Even though it only translated to 2 sacks, they got tons and tons of pressure. But, as we talked about this Oregon and Penn State matchup head-to-head, we anticipated a lot from Dante Moore over here on the show. Gave due respect to the offense all across the board, except maybe the tackles, right? The offensive tackles. But Dante Moore, Kenyon Sadiq, DeCorian Moore, that the stable of running backs, right? All impressive to start there. But especially on the defensive side of the ball, I am not afraid to eat my words there because, like I said, the secondary with first and second year players, aside from Thieneman, that is a group that you would think, hey, inexperience early on. No, they look like they've been playing ball together for quite a long time. Like they've been playing college ball for 3 to 4 years. They look like the veteran group. Penn State did not. What does that mean going forward? Again, Penn State took this to double overtime. They were able to make this a ball game, even though it seemed like it was out of reach. So Penn State is still, again, they're on the outside looking in. They're close, but close only counts in horseshoes. This is an Oregon team that is a national title contender. Early in the preseason or later on in the preseason, actually, it seems like Oregon was trending down. The win total odds were changing, that this would be a 10-2 team. This was a fringe playoff team. And now we're kind of all in line and on the same page that this is a team that should be considered a national title favorite. You can make the argument that they should be ranked number 1 as opposed to Ohio State. I think it's a toss-up at this point. They're not going to play in the regular season. They very well, at least, or it seems to be a crash course right now for the Big Ten championship. This is an Oregon team that is in that tier 1. Dante Moore is, at a minimum, conservatively speaking, a top 5 quarterback in all of college football. He has the case to be the number 1 overall quarterback in college football. I think Dante Moore is a future first round. Let me rephrase that. I meant to say number 1 overall selection. I think he is a future first overall pick, not just a future first rounder. A number 1 overall pick in the future. That's a testament to Dan Lanning, the system with Will Stein, Tosh Lupoi. You would never know it from this game that Tosh Lupoi was apparently just, there were disgruntled fans. I know that doesn't speak for everybody in the Oregon fan base, but that the defense just had question marks in general. They silenced all of it across the board. Oregon's not necessarily my guarantee, my guaranteed favorite, but they are definitely in that conversation alongside Ohio State, for example, in early in the season here. Things will continue to move, but Oregon with the deck stacked against them essentially to go on the road 1 week to prepare for Penn State. It makes Penn State look worse, but it also makes Oregon look a lot better to fly across the country, go into that hostile environment, come away with a victory the way that they did, and led decisively until the end. That shows a lot and speaks volumes about this Oregon team. a team that is only going to get better. So if they are this good right now, they are only going to get better because this is still a young QB, an offensive line that hasn't played a ton of football together, a secondary that still has time to mature and develop. All of that combined together, I would not want to play Oregon later on in the season if I'm Penn State. I would not want to play them in the Big Ten Championship. I would not want to play them in the college football playoff because if they were able to do that now, I can only imagine how Oregon, if they keep right, I know that the team's going to look different. Adjustments are going to be made. We don't know who's going to be healthy and who's not. That's just the honest part of the conversation. But if Oregon's roster and Penn State's roster, as it stands right now, have an exact similar rematch, Oregon's only going to be a better football team. I would hope that Penn State can at least make the adjustments to continue to keep that gap as close as possible. Because I think Oregon's only going to take more steps forward as a team, solidifying themselves as a national title contender for this season. They don't have to wait till next year because that was the dialogue. They're ready to go this season. That's where I'm going to end things on this edition of Locked On Nittany Lions. We have Big Ten Conference play opened up. Penn State football is 0-1 in conference, but they can still salvage the season. I appreciate each and every one of you for checking out these conversations, as we are going to have plenty of them about Penn State football, all your other favorite Penn State sports teams, as we do this daily. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. If you are new to the show, subscribe to the YouTube channel and wherever you get your podcasts for the latest daily conversations around your favorite Penn State sports teams.